find out just from here.
The Vietnam War was one of the most violent and bloody conflicts in history. Both the guerrillas and American soldiers did not hesitate to engage in the most brutal forms of attack at their disposal. That's why, more than 5 decades after the conflict ended, shocking events from that hellish period continue to come to light. In today's video, we will share another series of situations that were considered normal in the confrontation between the Viet Cong and the American armed forces but are horrifying when viewed from today's perspective. Stay tuned to your screen as we begin with the 5 most shocking and terrible things that happened in Vietnam. The CIA's actions. One of the lesser-known curiosities of the Vietnam War is the secret war carried out by the CIA using the Air America Airlines. In the early 1960s, thousands of Hmong guerrillas were organized, originating from Laos in response to American interests. Their mission was to support the airline's objectives in Vietnam while supposedly remaining neutral during the war. However, during the war, the Hmong guerrillas effectively worked for the United States by achieving military objectives against North Vietnam during the conflict. Under CIA orders, they attacked supply depots, trucks, and coordinated attacks on Viet Cong supply areas, although officially, they still appeared as impartial forces defending the airline. Despite their collaboration, in June 1974, when Air America had to leave Vietnam, the Hmong were left to fend for themselves by the CIA. Most of the guerrillas took refuge in the jungle until the end of the war, while others joined other projects the agency had underway. Not much is known about the actions of the Hmong guerrillas as this information is classified, but it is suspected that they were involved in many attack operations and assassinations until the end of the war. Strange payments to spies. What we've just seen are traps set by the Viet Cong to capture American soldiers, but were also used against the Vietnamese by infiltrated spies. As in all wartime conflicts, espionage played an important role in the strategy to win the war. This was one of the most dangerous tasks as there was always the risk of being exposed by someone loyal to the Viet Cong. The consequences ranged from extreme torture to death. However, the most surprising aspect of being a spy during the Vietnam War was not the job itself, but the methods of payment. Many spies were recruited in rural areas where physical money was not commonly used. Therefore, they were initially paid in rice, tools, and medicines that they could use in their villages. When Vietnamese spies began demanding more valuable rewards due to the danger of their tasks, the CIA came up with a rather peculiar solution. They decided to offer spies items from the Sears catalog as payment. Payments were made per completed mission, and they requested all sorts of things, ranging from Western clothing to household items. The problem was that it became dangerous to request such unusual items as it revealed which individuals and families had engaged in espionage, leading to their immediate capture and elimination. This practice was cancelled shortly after implementation and was replaced with American currency payments, which were more difficult to trace, although many spies were still discovered and executed as a lesson. Prisoners and torture. What we've just seen is a grim exhibition showing a recreation of the torture inflicted on captured soldiers during the Vietnam War. As in all wartime conflicts, torture and executions were commonplace on both sides. However, the Viet Cong became infamous for executing some of the most terrible and inhuman torture methods ever used. To begin with, prisoners were held captive wearing shackles that completely immobilized them. This way, they couldn't defend themselves from the torments they were subjected to, nor from the animals that roamed the filthy cells, such as fist-sized spiders, hungry rats, and thousands of deadly mosquitoes. One of the most common torture methods was to bury bamboo splinters under the victim's fingernails and toenails, pushing them in a bit further each day. They were also inserted into the nostrils and ears before being burned and charred. The most popular method involved putting the prisoner in long-sleeved shirts, which were tied to their backs. Then, a torturer would step on the victim's back to begin the torment. By forcibly stretching the prisoner's arms until their shoulders were almost dislocated, it completely cut off circulation in the victim's limbs. They even went so far as to cut the flesh of the prisoner's wrists down to the bone, but because the pressure from the shirt acted as a tourniquet, they wouldn't bleed, and they survived to endure all the pain and suffering. When they finally decided to end a prisoner's life, they would tie them tightly to a tree and force another prisoner to cut their throat with a bamboo branch. This procedure was one of the worst agonies a person could be subjected to, as it could take up to 6 hours. The role of Vietnamese women. Vietnam would not have achieved independence without the contribution of its women, ranging from rural women leading guerrilla forces in the countryside with makeshift weapons to female officers in the military. The so-called long-haired army, composed entirely of peasant women, played a crucial role in the Viet Cong's victory. Their weapons consisted of sharpened bamboo sticks and kitchen knives. One tactic used by these female guerrillas was to disguise themselves as street vendors, and when the target approached, they would reveal a deadly stick. This weaponry could be as simple as sharpened wood or even have a knife at the end, like a homemade bayonet with which they attacked their victims' necks. During the Tet Offensive of 1968, the Viet Cong carried out the assault on the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, a famous event that made headlines worldwide. However, no newspaper mentioned that it was a group led by women who carried out the attack. In fact, the leader of this offensive, Le Thi Rieng, was assassinated a few days after the event as a warning by her rivals. There was a significant number of women in the armed forces, many of them in leadership positions. In fact, approximately 40% of regiment commanders in the army were female. While most Vietnamese girls did not work full-time in the military, they collaborated with self-defense units, local militias, and regional guerrillas. They fought when their region was under attack, defending themselves with trenches and traps.
I hope this is probably all SIDS and we're getting busted, but I don't care.
Shotgun.
What's happening here is also happening to some extent at virtually every other American installation in Vietnam. Recent surveys estimate that well over 50% of the soldiers in Vietnam use marijuana.
You get really stoned. Then, who cares about the war? This war.
Drug use. The high level of drug use among military personnel during the Vietnam War was unprecedented in U.S. history. LSD, heroin, cocaine, hashish, methamphetamines, and alcohol were all common. These substances were often distributed to soldiers in large quantities to increase their endurance, boost their courage to face extreme situations, or simply to escape from the horrors of war. In general, recruits consumed whatever they could get their hands on, and Vietnam was a drug paradise. According to a report from 1966 to 1969, the armed forces consumed 225 million stimulant tablets, mostly dexedrine, an amphetamine derivative twice as potent as the benzedrine used during World War II. "We had the best amphetamines at our disposal, and they were supplied by the U.S. government," said Elton Mangione, a member of a long-range reconnaissance patrol known as LRP. Soldiers infiltrating Laos received 12 Darvon analgesic tablets, 24 codeine tablets, and 6 dexedrine pills for 4 days. For longer missions, special unit members were also given steroid injections. In many cases, the harsh conditions in the jungle prompted Americans to turn to drugs to escape from a terrifying, hostile, and alien environment. They took depressants and psychoactive drugs to prevent mental breakdowns and anxiety attacks during combat. It is said that the authorities were unaware that these substances were addictive. Other accounts suggest they knew but prioritized winning the war and having soldiers fight relentlessly. Many veterans stated that amphetamines increased both alertness and aggression. Some were so agitated that they felt capable of shooting children in the streets to relieve themselves, leading to numerous war crimes that horrified the world. We're nearing the end of this video, and we wanted to ask you which piece of information from the second part you find the most surprising. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching today's video, and we look forward to seeing you in the upcoming installments of Military History.